like I said, take cheap shots and discuss your manner of debate or your strategy. And I'm also grateful that you shared that you had that text message today, because everybody watching knows that I have been demanding not a debate, just a open conversation with Turning Point USA. They should be here. It shouldn't be you in that chair. It should be the person that took Charlie's place, maybe Erica Kirk, maybe Andrew Colvett. He's a spokesperson. And rather than doing that, they send us another influencer. So let's see how it goes.
Just out of curiosity, are you, between 0 to 100, what is the likelihood that you think Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk and killed him?
Based on the evidence right now, I don't know, I'd say 75, 85%.
Candace?
0%.
0%.
I'm at 0.
So
with what we've seen in terms of the evidence, I'm at 0%.
So not only, that maybe somebody was behind him as a patsy influencing him, you're not even saying that he didn't even shoot Charlie Kirk.
Right.
And kill him.
If you said, was he involved that day, as
Right.
I have consistently said on my platform, I would say yes, he was. I don't know what role he played, but as the shooter, 0%.
Do you have any evidence for it?
For what? My percentage?
The fact that he didn't shoot and kill Charlie Kirk.
Yes, which I'm hoping we're going to get to, all of the evidence that he feels that he has. I mean, I'm not even convinced that Charlie was shot from the rooftop on Losi that day, based on the evidence that has been.
Do you think he was shot?
I do not think that Charlie was shot from a 30-06 from Losi.
Yeah, but just shot at all.
I don't know. I think that a projectile hit Charlie, and I'm open to other people's presentations, but I have not seen any compelling evidence that Charlie was shot by a 30-06.
Can we see, maybe if we're going to have an olive branch to each other, if maybe we can establish what we consider the facts of the case to be first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So you're not sure if he was actually shot. You're open to alternative theories to that.
He was definitely hit with a projectile of some description. If we're talking about, was he shot from a gun, a 30-06, I would say definitively no.
Okay.
It defies common sense to think that he had a Superman neck. And even if he did have a Superman neck, which has been demonstrated, I think actually recently a YouTuber actually set up Valhalla steel cages and shot it and it went through. So under no circumstance will I.
So at least not a 30-06.
Definitively not. A
Okay,
30-06
but you
from
are
Losi,
open-
150 feet. No.
But you're not necessarily closing off the avenue that he could have been shot at all.
With maybe a smaller
Caliber? Okay. And then there's some things that I'm going to make concessions on that I do think we need more answers on, and I'm fine with that. And we can get to those things as well. The other thing is, in the timeline, one of the things that we dispute, I think, on the timeline is that you think that Robinson drove hours away to a steakhouse in
Yes.
the timeline. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the compelling evidence that you think you have there?
I spoke to the owner of the restaurant, and I have seen the receipt. I know the conversation that I had, and I think it's enough that it will be presented. Obviously, if this goes to trial, but yes, I do believe that he was in Panguitch, which is near his grandparents' home.
Did he give you an unedited copy of that receipt?
I have seen an unedited copy of that receipt. It was not given to me from the owner. But I want to, before we get into like all the timeline stuff, I want to address what you think is evidence so we can keep this on par with what your claim is.
Well, I think that that's a piece of evidence that's in dispute. And that's why I'm...
Yeah, but
because if
we're
not
trying to get
establishing
to
the
whether there's
timeline-
overwhelming evidence that Tyler Robinson did this.
Yeah,
so
if you
whether
want to
then
use
starting
the first,
with
if you want to use the first part of that for the internal critique,
yeah,
for you,
we
that's
should go
fine.
over the actual
Okay,
evidence that
so
we feel.
The first reason that I think it's compelling evidence is that Tyler Robinson's rifle was found near the crime scene. So I would consider that to be very good evidence. And also the fact of the matter is that I dispute this claim that a 30-06 could not have made this wound. I think that that's absurd. 150 grain Remington core lock absolutely could shatter when it hits the neck of any human being. When you say that there's some steel neck and it's a smaller caliber, you have to make a counter explanation. Why wouldn't a smaller caliber also go through bone?
It could. I didn't say it can't.
Right, exactly. So if that's the case, then ammunition is going to be the critical key here. And if we have frangible ammunition, which we do in this case, a flex tip round, well, I'm sorry, not a flex tip, a soft point round from a 150 grain Remington core lock, that's just a small jacket that goes around the actual lead piece. This thing could have split apart in air for all we know, but definitely upon impact. And we have the medical examiner who confirms this in a summary. And my team can bring that up, the summarization, which means he would have to be a part of some kind of conspiracy as well.
Okay. So just to start with your point about saying that the gun was found near him, near Losey Center, or I guess off in the woods. That gun, did you watch the testimony? Did you watch the preliminary hearing?
Yeah, we covered it live. Yeah.
Okay. So forgetting what the summary of the medical report was, did you watch the testimony that was given by the Caitlin Oliver, the ATF woman, Samantha Carner, any of those people who went into the science of
Yes, I recall. You're talking about
the bullet analysis?
Yeah, when they went into the DNA.
Okay, so that's kind of the most relevant part.
Okay.
I'm not denying, I've never denied on my platform or anywhere else that a gun owned by Tyler Robinson was found near the crime scene, right? That doesn't remove, if you think somebody set up as a patsy, you could take a gun out of this room right now and you could walk out and plant it in the woods near a crime scene.
I agree.
That's not convincing evidence to me.
I concur with the fact that that's a possibility.
So you I think have said on a platform that you were a gunsmith.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And for how many years?
Many, many years.
For many years.
Mm-hmm.
You also said that you were an Army sniper.
I wasn't a sniper in the Army.
Okay.
And I never said that.
Sorry, your wife tweeted that you were an Army sniper.
Yeah, I don't know. Like 15 years ago, she said something.
Does it change 15 years later?
She said that it was colloquial. So
Army sniper is a colloquial term?
Yeah, I was never an Army sniper.
Okay. What did you do in the Army? Did you teach this? She then I corrected it and said you taught rifles in the Army?
No, I didn't teach rifle. No, I taught rifles as a private citizen.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I was an NRA instructor for many, many, many years alongside my gun shop.
As with your expertise, when she gave testimony on the stand, Samantha Carner, that there was dust and there was debris that was found in the gun barrel.
Yep.
And then when we had the person who, and this was, I believe, Caitlin Oliver, who explained painfully about the DNA, the prints.
Well, let's start with a point at a time.
I'm not done. You said something, so I'm going to finish my thought, right?
You don't want to do a point at a time?
No, well, sure. If you want to respond to,
but
I want you to respond to 2 points.
debris.
I want you to start with 2 points.
Okay.
Dust and debris in the gun barrel.
Yeah.
Secondly, the fact that there were 5 sets of prints, 5 plus actually by the end of the testimony, 5 sets of prints for which we already had the woman who worked for the FBI forensics testify that above 2 prints, if you're taking a sample, it's no longer a science, right? She testified that when they took the sample of what was on the trigger, they saw 5 plus prints. And among those 5 plus prints, Tyler Robinson's was the most degraded. So I would like you to explain how Tyler Robinson's prints could be the most degraded when she said, actually, you could have DNA on something that you've touched. You could have DNA on something that you've never touched. And to get DNA degradation, they've looked at pieces, items 20, 40 years on that don't have degradation. Yet Tyler Robinson's prints, amongst 5 plus other prints, were the most degraded on that weapon.
Yeah. So let's get into all 3 of the claims. First, with debris. When it comes to debris, firing a rifle doesn't always blow the debris out of the barrel.
Okay. You think there could be debris and dust.
Yeah.
He just fired the weapon.
Sure.
Okay.
Not only that, he left it in a forest. Now, I don't know if you agree with me, but if you leave a rifle in a wooded area, it's also possible that debris could get in that way. But I'm not even sure that that's what the case is. I think it's far more likely that he fired the shot, it just didn't blow all the debris out, and it often doesn't. You'll find this if you take Grandpappy's dirty rifle and it's all dusty inside the bore and you go fire it, you'll often look down the bore and there's still dust.
Okay.
Happens all the time.
Okay. And the prints?
Yeah, so the prints, we don't know all of the details on just yet.
We do. It was excruciatingly long testimony on the prints.
We don't, because they haven't gone to trial, so we don't know on the print front. But Tyler Robinson's DNA was on there. You made the claim that Lance Twig's DNA was on there, and it was not.
Well, when she gave the testimony, no, hold on. First, let's go to your first point, because that's wrong. We can get a fact check on that. What do you mean we don't know until it goes to trial about the degraded prints? She testified, and this is the person who took the prints.
Yes, but the problem is that inside of this particular testimony, you agree with me that there's going to be much more of the DNA analysis during the trial, right?
But you also would agree that her fact is not going to change, that among the prints, his was the most degraded. So I'm asking you to address that. How could that be possible?
Let's give it, let's just grant this for a second as a possibility that his fingerprints were degraded.
It's not a possibility. It's a fact. The person who took it.
I'm just granting it for the sake of argument.
You should grant it because it's a fact that she presented.
So now it's granted. So what?
What do you mean, so what?
Yeah, so what? What does that prove?
It proves that if his prints were the most degraded amongst 5 of them, you're going to have to explain how that's possible if he's the one that recently fired the weapon.
Yeah, so wait a second. You're saying that it's an impossibility that if his fingerprints are the most degraded,
I'm telling you
if
to
that's
explain
the
it.
case.
You're the gunsmith.
Well,
so
wait a
explain
second. How would a gunsmith give an analysis on fingerprints or DNA? Do you think that I work in a DNA laboratory
So
with
your
fingerprints?
answer is I don't know. You can just say you don't know.
But
you
I
don't
did.
have to.
But I did.
No, you said so what? So
Yeah,
say
so-
I don't know. I
but what
actually
would
don't
that-
have an
what
explanation
would that
for that,
prove,
Candace.
though, is my question.
Well, I think that what it would prove is that it is a more viable theory that people who had stronger prints on the gun may have used it more recently.
Did they say who else had fingerprints on the gun?
They named Matt Robinson explicitly.
Okay.
And this was a part of the testimony where she was speaking about how they got samples of elimination samples from the home of Amber Robinson, Matt Robinson, and Lance Twiggs. Those are the 3 names they named.
So are you saying that Twiggs
Would you like me to
fingerprints-
finish my statement?
I just want to make sure I'm clarifying.
I'm trying to finish the answer, but it can't be clarified until the answer comes out of my mouth.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
this was a portion of her testimony where she was explaining how they got elimination samples from the home. And she named Matt Robinson, Amber Robinson, and Lance Twiggs as the elimination samples that she was using. And so she explicitly said, some of them, so we can assume 2 out of the 3, were their prints were found on the gun. She explicitly named Matt Robinson as someone who had prints on the gun, and then said there were 5 people that they had taken that sample from. And again, what's also relevant here is the earlier testimony, which came from the FBI forensics analyst, I believe it was on day 2, where she said that when you're using those mixtures and those samples and you get up to 5+, it's really hard to make any sort of a determination. So both of those things are relevant. If you can't explain why his prints are the most degraded and you're saying he is the shooter, it's not really a so what. It's an open-ended question that people have a right to pursue. It's not a conspiracy. It's actually proof of my claim that there is evidence that he was set up as a patsy.
That wouldn't prove anything about him being a patsy.
It said it's evidence to support the claim that he could have been set up as a patsy.
So this is why I said earlier, so what? Because even if it's the case, this doesn't have an explanation for it yet. That doesn't actually give you any evidence in your corner for Tyler Robinson being a patsy.
Okay,
hang on. I didn't cut you off, right? You would need to actually explain how this would demonstrate Tyler Robinson. This is tied into Robinson being a patsy. Are you claiming that these fingerprints were Lance Twiggs or that he had any DNA there?
I'm saying that it could be Matt Robinson, it could be Amber Robinson. That sort of information is going to come out during the trial.
How would that tie into the idea that he's a patsy?
Yes,
though?
because if his is the most degraded prints and the information that I shared on my platform is true, that this gun was given to Tyler Robinson as an heirloom. I had conversation with members of the Robinson family, Twiggs family, both of them. You know, like I said, we're not just dreaming. And if we're having those conversations and they told me that gun was only given to Tyler Robinson because it was a family heirloom. Okay, so it was his grandfather's gun or great-grandfather's gun.
Okay.
I don't remember the difference. I don't remember which one it was. And so he got it because he's the firstborn. So, but he's not much of a shooter, is what I was told. And so he has this because he inherited it, essentially. So if I get something from my grandpa and I put it up on the shelf and I own this, you could see that could be.
How do we get to the patsy part?
You don't let me ever get to the end of the sentence. So how could we get to the patsy part if I
Okay,
can't get to the end of the
I'll wait
sentence?
patiently till we get to
So
the
that
patsy
could be a
part.
reasonable explanation as to why there was dust in the barrel, because he doesn't often shoot this weapon and he is indeed a fisher. And it could also be a reasonable explanation for why we have Matt Robinson's prints on this. Obviously, Lance Twiggs, even if he has prints on things, they live together, that doesn't really mean anything. But that could demonstrate that somebody took his weapon and put it somewhere. His prints are the most degraded. Somebody else's prints, there's more presence of somebody else's prints, and that could demonstrate that somebody is taking items from his house and putting it into various places.
But it also could demonstrate nothing. So the problem that you have here is that this is pure conjecture.
No,
this is not evidence that Tyler Robinson is a patsy. It's only evidence that you have conjectured up that, if it's the case that these are the more degraded prints, then therefore that means must be patsy because dad's fingerprints on gun.
I didn't say must be
Describe
patsy.
how this actually links in to Robinson being a patsy.
Okay, I just described that for you, so I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you, so I'm going to move on from that. But to just go back to your point about this is not evidence, you can't make that claim because the entire basis for why you think that there is evidence for Tyler Robinson being the person that took the shot is based off of a hearing under Utah 1102 rules, meaning that they are doing the exact same thing that I am doing. This is the state. You said you're here to represent the state. Well, did you watch the preliminary hearing?
No, I didn't say I was here to represent the state.
The state's position you think is strong and convincing.
What I'm here to do is represent my own opinion,
You
which
said
is
in
that
your opening statement,
based on the evidence presented so far by the state.
The state has
that I find it
presented
convincing.
evidence under Utah's 1102 rule.
But this doesn't demonstrate any patsy
No, that's very
behavior.
important because that rule is hearsay. So you can't say at the same time,
Great.
Candace, you're not allowed to. And what that means under the Utah rule, which I'm sure you know, because I'm sure you watched the preliminary hearing and yourself understand what that means, is that the entire hearing was hearsay. It means none of that information that was presented is going to be allowed. The majority of it, the overwhelming majority of it is not going to be allowed at the trial. They're allowed to present when it's just a probative hearing.
I don't think all the evidence that was put in was hearsay.
Okay, you didn't watch this case.
But not only that, no.
This is a huge point. This is
Hey,
crazy
we
that you
can
don't
call
know
for
this.
a fact check if
Yes,
all the evidence
we need
was
more than a
put
fact
in.
check. This was every single
The
day.
team in the back is
Utah
actually
rule
saying
1102.
they want to go there. So they said there's a medical examiner's explanation of the shooting that's in the back. Rob, if you want to pull it up, and then Candace, if anybody from your team wants to pull something up, no problem as well, but they're requesting it. If you guys got it, pull it up so we can show it. And in the interim, is that it?
Yeah. So I'll read this.
Just what are we looking at, just so we know?
Yeah, so this says the bullet, or at least part of it, sequentially perforated the interior left of Mr. Kirk's neck, strap muscles of the left side of the neck. This is a summary, by the way. Left common cartoid on the left internal external jugular veins. The bullet also obliterated the left side C27 vertebrae, transacted the cervical spinal cord. Medical examiner observed a significant portion of Kirk's cervical spinal cord was traumatically absent. Mr. Kirk suffered from other severe injuries, including bilateral, apical, and posterior intercostal hemorrhages, pulmonary, apical hemorrhages, multiple disruptions to the thyroid, et cetera, et cetera. So the summary of the examination is that he was shot.
Okay.
That was what they were pulling that up for.
Okay, and I'm not disputing that he could have been hit with a projectile. We're not disputing that, so I don't know why this was brought up as a fact check. Could you bring up 1102 Utah rule? Because this is an unbelievable point that you're making by saying that I am not allowed to infer off of evidence.
You can infer. I'm trying to follow the inference.
But your entire reason, like you asserted that you believe there's overwhelming evidence on the basis of what we saw in the preliminary hearing. The entire preliminary hearing was hearsay.
Yeah, I'm fine with your inferences.
No, you just literally said I couldn't do that. Yes, I can.
No, I didn't. I'm just saying from your inference, how do we get to Patsy?
This is how you got to Shooter. The Tyler Robinson did it.
No,
the same way that you got to Tyler Robinson.
Shooter from that.
Yes, you did. You again, this is something important, so we should pull up a fact check about what the 1102 Utah, and under their constitution, for the sake of a preliminary hearing, they do not have to have hard evidence. They don't have to put people on the trial.
They don't have to.
But no, that's why the entire hearing was basically hearsay. Officer Bagley was
saying,
but not
all of it, like I said.
The overwhelming majority.
Again, no dispute.
Outside of the one that you don't want to give. Please don't cut me off.
Though.
Outside of that is what's in dispute. It means that your entire brand of saying you don't have evidence falls apart when the entire preliminary hearing is based off of hearsay. In fact, Lance's testimony before they had about an hour debate, actually maybe it was more than an hour debate before he sat, and they said this is not going to be allowed. You wouldn't even be allowed to do this. We'd be able to cross-examine him. The questions that they're asking Lance are all leading. And what did he say? Well, I'm the magistrate under Utah Constitution, 1102. It is my job to allow all of this so we can see if the state has enough here that we can then move to a trial, which will then, they would not allow this stuff. They would say we get to cross-examine Lance. Lance just can't willy-nilly say.
I'm not disputing.
But the entire substance of your argument is that people can't infer off of evidence.
No,
that's what you're saying
it's
to
not.
me. When you say, Candace,
I'll
can't
give
talk
you the
about the degraded
argument
prince,
now.
which is a fact.
Yeah, I'm not
and then
saying
infer
that.
off of that.
Didn't say
that Tyler could have been a patsy.
You're just literally making stuff up. So here's what the position is. I'm asking this.
I'm saying that let's pull that up. Let's pull that up. I am doing exactly what the state did. I'm looking at a piece of evidence and I am saying.
But you're not showing me how you get there.
Can you describe to the audience what Rule 1102
so
means?
just so everybody who's watching this at home understands what I am saying, even if he doesn't. What Andrew is arguing is that I don't have the right to extrapolate from
Never
a
made that
fact
argument.
like
Just making it up. Just purely making it up. I'm asking based on
Andrew.
based on
Can I
your
show my evidence? You
inference.
just showed yours. Reliable hearsay.
You'll get a chance.
Reliable hearsay in criminal preliminary examinations. The entire preliminary hearing that you just saw was on the basis of reliable hearsay. And what that means essentially is the people who are making the statements can just say, Patrick told me that he did this on Monday. Patrick's not here. And that is, they can allow that into the hearing. That's just because it's just meant to be probative. And so it's the state saying, here's what we have inferred. So you are allowed to take a piece of evidence and then you are allowed to infer off of that evidence. Okay. Case in point, that's a demonstration that's a demonstration of what I just did. I said the prints were the most degraded off of Tyler Robinson. And from that, what I am inferring is that it's plausible that Tyler Robinson was set up.
That doesn't, that's the point in contention.
That's not a point in contention. That's
the point in contention.
It's not a point in contention. If you're saying it's a point,
it is the point in contention.
It's not the point in contention. I'm telling you that was what the entire hearing allowed for. So the evidence that he is describing,
we're asking you
that he is using to argue his case is all based on inference, not fact.
Great.
Inference, not fact. So what they are inferring off of the facts.
So again, we're going to take this, and I'm just going to even grant it because it's irrelevant. I'm asking how you get to the inference that even if you dispute that piece of evidence, that means patsy. I'm looking for the logical chain for how you get to that inference.
What I am telling you is it's the exact same way that when you tweeted, I think that this evidence is overwhelming. When they say that looks like Tyler Robinson's car, he drives a similar car, okay? They are inferring that that's Tyler Robinson.
Can you walk me through the inference that I understand?
It's not a fact. It's not a fact. When you show a blurry image, which you kept citing that we have images.
I'm talking about your inference that the fingerprints, even if they're degraded, equals patsy. How do you get that inference?
I didn't say it equals patsy. I think it is enough evidence that it should be explored, which is exactly what this preliminary was in the inverse.
That's not in dispute. What's in dispute is when you said, I'm using this as evidence that he could have been a patsy. I'm asking, how do you get the inference to patsy from that?
Because what I am saying is that it shows that somebody else had more DNA presence on that gun than Tyler Robinson did. So it is plausible, which is all they're doing. They're presenting plausibility based off of the facts, okay? It is plausible that somebody just took his gun and put it there. That's it.
Is there equally...
that's how it works.
And is there equally 100 other plausible explanations?
I think that's the reason why most people are exploring when things don't make sense.
Got it.
So yes, at the beginning of that, this is how the court process works.
So
just so we're clear,
if there's 100 other plausible explanations, then Candace, why is it that we should go with this idea that it was a patsy?
I'm not saying that we should go with the idea that it was a patsy. I am saying that there is.
I thought that was the whole defense. Your whole claim today.
My whole claim was that there is more evidence that he is set up as a patsy.
How does that equal evidence of patsy?
I don't know how many times I can say this. Like I'm saying that I am using the exact same mechanism that you are accepting for some reason in the Utah courtroom.
Yeah.
Right. To say, I'm going to look at the evidence and I'm going to infer an alternative theory. So you just saw the states and you're accepting it. And they have not presented any concrete facts. You listed on your own Twitter that what you found to be convincing was something that looked like his car pulled into the driveway, a blurry image.
No, I didn't.
A standard white guy coming up the steps that could literally be anyone.
This never happened.
Can we get a fact check on that? Can we pull up his tweet where he goes over
I
the
didn't say that's what convinced me.
When you actually didn't say it's what convinced me, but you said this is the evidence that you found to be overwhelming, and you named, I believe, actually 5 things. I think you said it was his car. You said it was.
Well, there's multitudes of things that I find. You just said you didn't say it, so
we're going to get a fact check on that. You did.
Go ahead.
You said the blurry images coming up the steps. Quite literally, when Officer Bagley testified, they talk about when I'm talking about making inference. This is the most I thought was the most absurd testimony I've ever heard. And pardon me, it was actually David Hull. They asked him a question. How did you know the guy in the maroon shirt was the same as the guy that came up the stairs later that was wearing the American flag black shirt? And he said, they're wearing the same shoes.
Why is that absurd?
That's how you decided these two are the same people. Oh, wow. What a scientific. They're both wearing Converses. Okay. That's an absurd thing to say. That is not evidence that these are the same people if we're both wearing Converses. That was what he said. That's what flew on the stand.
But I still don't understand how that would be absurd. If somebody,
it's an absurd thing.
For instance, if somebody were to change their clothes but keep the same shoes on, wouldn't you utilize the shoes to try to track that person? If
the
they were
idea that on a college campus, two people wearing this totally different outfits, but both wearing Converses can't happen is such an absurdity that I don't even need to like argue that. I'm just going to let people deal. Why is it absurd? Just concede that point. Obviously, it's an absurd thing to say.
I'm not
I know
sure,
these are the same people because they're both wearing Converse.
Yeah, I'm not sure if in context that's what happened. But even
if
it is,
you can get a fact check on it.
But even if it is, again,
and it was
if we're utilizing inferences, whenever we're dealing with logic and we're dealing with making a logical inference, we're going to take the entire collaboration of evidence and then we're going to make inferences from that. You would do that with any type of logical proposition. Otherwise, you could never have a true or false claim.
But you just told me I couldn't.
So
do
when that never happened. You're just making stuff up. So anyway, when we're talking about logical inferences, what I'm looking for is the logical inferences that you have that Tyler Robinson's a patsy based on the totality of evidence that you have.
We can keep going through your other evidence, but we should find his tweet where he lists the reasons that he was convinced.
So let's start with the 30-06. I think that's fine.
Your team's looking for. Do you remember how long ago that was?
The tweets of the 5. Did you delete it or no?
No,
did
I
you
don't
delete
delete
tweets?
tweets.
Okay, cool. I just look for. He said it was his
misspell.
car. It was his. It was the car, and it was definitely the staircase photos, and it was when the trial was going on.
Okay, she has it. Perfect. If you got Skylar has it. If you want to pull it up so we can see it.
Somebody said, so give me the clear evidence right here. I want you to provide it right here. All I heard from the investigator was, we believe this to be Tyler Robinson. Is belief something you go as a fact? You wrote the car pulling in. That's a totally blurry image. Robinson getting out of it. You have no idea if that's Tyler Robinson. The fact that he is seen 4 other times on camera, the fact being just a standard white boy with brown hair was seen walking up staircase. The DNA on the roof, we should discuss that. And on the screwdriver that he left behind, it's overwhelming, man.
Yeah, but that's not an exhaustive list.
Well, just so we're clear, you did tweet it.
But it's not an exhaustive.
Yeah,
well,
but just 5 seconds ago, you should concede.
You said I only said this one thing and said that was overwhelming, actually.
That's not what I said.
It is. You could even
Patrick,
pull your own
did
clip.
I say that?
Can you fact check if that was said or not? I did not hear her say
So the
this.
thing that's funny here is like we still aren't getting to any of these inferences. So
why are you pivoting?
So
but just say you were wrong. It's cool to just say I was wrong.
I'm not wrong. So back to the tweet aspect here. It was really funny. That's not an exhaustive list of why I find it
I didn't say it was exhaustive. I just said you said it.
And on top of no, you didn't. You said that I only said this one thing and then said based on that it's over. Well, I didn't. You didn't mention that I mentioned the screwdriver, DNA, all of these other things. You never mentioned any of that. So no, you're actually incorrect there. But on top of that, moving over to the actual evidence itself.
Are you
yes, I'm okay. Anyway, back to the evidence
if you're
itself.
okay.
Yes,
actually,
I'm
I'm glad you're asserting that you're okay. I wasn't worried about your health. I'm just saying that I just said you tweeted this. You said no, I didn't. We got a fact check, and now you're like just going to gaslight me and pretend that I said
there's no gaslighting.
It wasn't exhaustive. I never said that. I just said you did say this.
Zero gaslighting.
I didn't say you couldn't have said more, but I would like to address what you said in that tweet.
This is your time. If this is how you want to spend it interrogating my position, you can do it that way.
I'm just addressing what you asserted on your Twitter was like the hard evidence that convinced you was overwhelming. That's literally your debate claim.
That's not what you said. That's not actually, in fact, what happened in that exchange. I was here for it.
So what's your position here?
Yeah, so my position is that based on all of the evidence, which has been demonstrated, at least all the evidence to my knowledge, that I am actually not seeing anything that's compelling as an alternative theory. I'm not seeing anything which is convincing me of something otherwise than what the state is presenting as evidence. That's my position, if that's what you're asking me.
So just going back to what you did actually tweet, is it fair for me to ask questions about that? That's
is that the only tweet you're going to ask me about?
Well, we're addressing your claim that the evidence is overwhelming, and this is a tweet where you listed what you felt was overwhelming. I think that's fair,
but not.
Right? I feel like that's fair,
but not exhaustive. Just so you know.
And I never said it was exhaustive, even though you said I did.
Sure, whatever you want.
But yeah, so going back to that, all of that, as you say to me, well, Candace, why are you addressing and making inferences off of the testimony?
No, I never asked you why. You're making inferences. I asked you how, with the inference you made, you got to the conclusion.
Okay. So I would like to know how you got to the conclusion. And I'm just going to throw it right back at you because for some reason you permit yourself to do it. And that's what I'm demonstrating is that you permit yourself to do it. And then you say, when I do it, it's a conspiracy, right?
No.
How are you able to infer off of blurry staircase images that is Tyler Robinson?
Yeah. So in that particular case, what you do is you take that evidence, you combine it with other evidence. So it's not just that Tyler Robinson is seen in the staircase.
Why are you calling him Tyler Robinson in the staircase? That's what I want to get to.
Yeah, because, I mean, we'll just use this. If you don't agree that that's Tyler Robinson, then you would just have to humor me. I think it is, so I'm using the name.
But why do you think it is? Because you make everybody, you call them
literally what I'm
conspiracy
trying
theorists.
to explain to you.
Okay.
So if you're asking for my inference why I think it's Tyler Robinson, is because Tyler Robinson said in his text messages, you'll be able to see me on security footage at the campus. Said it in his own messages. On top of that, twigs, yes, you can pull them up if you want to fact check that. He did say. On top
I would.
of
I'm
that,
sorry. I actually think I really did miss that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't remember him saying you're going to see me in.
I'm paraphrasing,
Can
but
we
it was
pull that
close to
up?
it.
Yeah,
If
I
you
don't-
may
I feel-
have
I
it.
think
If you
And by
that's
the
not
way,
pull it up.
Twigs himself said that he
You're going
had
to see me on
some
the staircase.
Maybe a tiny bit of doubt, but it sure looked like Tyler Robinson inside of this various surveillance footage that he saw.
So Lance, sorry.
Hang
Go
on,
ahead. You're
hang on.
right.
So there's multiple reasons why it is that I believe that that's Tyler Robinson,
Mm-hmm.
not just because of blurry footage.
Did you have a dream? Just kidding.
No, it's because I combined multitudes of evidences.
Okay, so let's address those multitude of evidences. The first one we're working on a fact check on because I do not ever remember him tweeting. That's me in the stair. I mean, or
Well, he didn't tweet
texting.
it.
Texting that's me in the staircase. I think that I
didn't say that. I said I literally didn't. What I said is that he texted over, "You'll be able to see me in footage at UVU," and I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said.
Yeah, could we get a fact check on that?
You
The
can find
second
it.
thing you said was Lance's testimony, and actually what Lance says is, I'm not 100%.
I agree.
But in terms of what he wears, again, pointing out the absurdity, he wears Converses, he wears sneakers. If his boyfriend is not 100%, I'd like to understand why Andrew Wilson is overwhelmed by it. That's what I'm trying to get to. And lastly, I would like to remind you that Lance's statement would not be permitted. This was a huge part of the preliminary hearing, that they were leading. All the questions that were asked of him were leading, so they would be struck down at the actual trial. And also, I would like to remind you that he got use immunity for that. Use immunity.
I understand.
Which means that
happens, by the way, all the time in these cases.
And I'm wondering why it particularly happened for Lance and this testimony. And I would also like to point out that something that's remarkable about this, again, leaning to my perspective, that Lance has a lot more, which I have said many times, Lance has a lot more involvement than the feds are letting us know. I think more is going to come out
that either.
because they interviewed him on September 11th. And then for whatever reason, just ahead of what was supposed to be slated as the preliminary hearing, which was initially supposed to be in May, they bring him back to do this interview, which in my opinion should have never been allowed. And I actually agree with the defense that it's a violation of his constitutional rights not to allow them to have cross-examined him. But I understand Utah 1102, do what you do. It's all hearsay. But to allow it in that way for him to just be able to also have use immunity, knowing that he's not going to get in trouble. He could literally get up there and lie about anything, and he's not going to get in trouble because the use immunity was given to him in April, I believe. April 28th is when they gave that testimony to the defense. I think they shot it in like April 20th of 2026. That is not compelling to me for somebody who has use immunity to give a testimony and to say, I'm not really sure, but definitely like he wears jeans and stuff.
That's not what he said.
He did. Actually, you can get a fact check on that.
Yeah, that's
Skyler,
not,
I think
he
you
said
pull
much
it up
more
if you
than
want
that.
to. So a couple things we have. We have Rule 801, Tyler's messages, that says it's not hearsay. But first, go to what Candace is asking about. Skyler, I think you have it. You just texted me if you want to pull it up. You said you have the text. If we can put that up on the screen. Thank you.
It was me. Look at the pictures from the surveillance footage. It was me. Okay. I literally said to you, it's not an oof. I said I didn't remember this, and I'm happy to have a fact check on that. Okay. I didn't call for the fact check saying you're wrong. I literally said I don't remember that from the
I'm
text
just
messages.
saying to you, like, I'm trying to be concise for you.
And then also bring the 801 that you just said. What was the other one?
Yep, the 801, Tyler messages saying it's not hearsay, if you have that as well. There you go.
Wait, what are we saying is not hearsay? I thought
Statements
you said
that
the
are not
messages.
hearsay. A statement that meets the following conditions is not hearsay.
It was hearsay. They said it in the trial.
Hang on.
Okay.
Okay. Is consistent with the declarant's testimony, and the declarant denies having made the statement or has forgotten, or is consistent with the declarant's testimony and is offered to rebut the express implied charge that the declarant recently fabricated or acted in recent improper influence or motive in testifying. So then Wouldn't that mean that a bunch of this wasn't hearsay?
So the issue with his
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Would that mean that a bunch of this wasn't hearsay?
So the opposing party, which down the line, like I said, they talked about this for about an hour and a half, and they discussed how if Lance was in court and he was giving his first party, giving his testimony as the opposing party, whatever, all of this would be fine. They had an issue with how the questions were being asked and that they were not allowed to cross-examine him. So that is why his video testimony would not be accepted in the main trial. And what I said to you is this entire preliminary hearing is under Utah's 1102. So they are allowed to just use hearsay. And
No,
so the
you didn't
judge,
say
when
that.
he
You said most of it was hearsay, actually.
Yeah,
The
it was.
overwhelming majority.
Well, I mean, I'm leaning now into my opinion that some scientific aspects, which they kept asserting, like the federal rule 403 or 402, some of those parts were quite
Sounds
scientific.
like you're backtracking quite a bit.
No, I'm not backtracking at all. What do you feel
Okay.
like let me help you. Where do you feel like I'm backtracking? It
Well,
literally was done under Utah's 1102.
Yeah, nobody disputed that.
Okay.
What the dispute was is whether or not most of it was overwhelmingly hearsay.
Yes,
is that the case?
it was. Yes, that's
Okay.
a fact. I'm not backtracking on
And
that at
what
all.
are the things
How
that-
many times did you, I mean,
Yeah.
if you watch the preliminary hearing, it's like
Yeah.
they constantly, I'm 1102, 1102, 1102, 1102,
That's true.
1102. And the reason for that is because it's allowed. I'm not saying it's illegal. It's allowed at this stage, but I'm just reminding you that when you're going to sit across from someone and your claim is going to be, where is your hard evidence? This is what I heard and I agree with what I'm watching. You are watching the state put on a hearsay
Yes. There's
preliminary
gonna be
hearing.
hearsay. True.
And all of those things are not going to be allowed, right? Even when they got into witness statements and things of that nature. There's a reason why they swear you in and they say, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth. Did you, write
things
this
are not in
statement?
dispute.
So it's the overwhelming majority of what you saw was hearsay because other people were representing other people's statements. They were saying they had conversations. We don't know where it came from. All allowed at this stage. Okay. But it's hearsay. So it
But
doesn't,
even a lot of that stuff may not fall under hearsay under what we just read, right?
but the evidence that you're speaking about, like when you're just, when you say that we're going off vibes, you don't know Tyler Robinson. Okay. His boyfriend is not 100% it was him. So I'm going back to your points that you made that this was overwhelming evidence for you. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, overwhelming just means
You can't
convincing.
consider another option that there
Well,
could have been
hang
another
on. Do you
white
agree
guy
with me
wearing
that I-
Converses on campus.
Yeah, do you agree with me that I said that what overwhelming means to me is that it's just very convincing to me?
Yeah, and I find it to be completely unconvincing.
fair. I
Because
understand that
I
you
looked
can
at those
find-
blurry photos
Yeah.
that they presented and said, your statement on right now is that
Yeah.
he's wearing Converses and he also that's just
But
crazy
these aren't
to me.
the evidences that I find the most convincing.
Well, you said that in your Twitter.
That's not the only thing I've ever said on my Twitter about this case.
Right, but the question that was asked of you was pretty direct.
Yeah.
Right? What
And
did you
and
find
this
to
is
be
not an exhaustive list of all the things
Well,
that
that's
I
not
find
what you said in the
convincing.
tweet. You can tweet longer too. It's not like we're limited now to 240 characters anymore.
So anything that I tweet and all other tweets that I've ever made are now excluded because I used the word overwhelming in this one.
Well, they
even
wanted-
though all of this information I've said so publicly over and over and over again is what informs my position for why I'm convinced on the case. That's bizarre to me.
I feel like this is Andrew versus Andrew. Somebody asked you a question. What are the points that you find to be the most overwhelming? And you answered.
You mean
and
from that day, from that particular day of the hearing that I was responding to?
Okay, this is something you find to be more overwhelming? Let me answer that question.
Yes,
okay.
that's what
do
I
you?
was saying,
Okay, go ahead.
yes.
Go on. What do you find to be more overwhelming?
Yeah.
Can we do this? Do we want to get into it, or do we want to do a quick ad break? Are you guys good to keep going, or
I'm fine to keep going, but we can
would
also.
you like to take a quick break?
Doesn't
or
matter to me either
if
way.
we're going into a different topic, that may be another 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I don't want to stop you
Yeah,
guys in the middle
let's
of it.
end
So
it
what
on
would you
what
like
you
to
find
do?
to be more overwhelming.
Yeah. So if we're for me, it's the confessions, the text messages, all of that is what I consider to be, from my opinion, that's the most convincing for me.
Okay, we should discuss the text message confessions when we get back, if you'd like to.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea. Folks, we're going to take a quick ad break. We will be back in 3.5 minutes. Thank you.
All right, you guys, for nearly 2,000 years, Christians have lived continuously in a small village just outside of Jerusalem called Taipei. They remained through the Roman Empire, the Crusades, the Ottoman Empire, and countless changes of power. Today, that Christian presence is in serious danger. One father in the West Bank put it simply. He said, quote, "I don't want to leave. My family is buried here. My church is here." In Taipei, the church is more than a place of worship. It's a school, a medical clinic, a food distribution center, and a safe gathering place for families. When the church can no longer serve the community, families begin to leave, and a living Christian presence in the Holy Land begins to disappear. But you can help. Just $35 provides a full day of protection and support for vulnerable Christian families, and $83 a month can help sustain that protection throughout the month. I support the Vulnerable People Project because 93% of every donated dollar goes directly toward protecting vulnerable families and communities on the ground. If preserving a living Christian presence in the Holy Land matters to you, visit vulnerablepeopleproject.com. Again, that's vulnerablepeopleproject.com. All right, you guys, do you feel like you're working harder than ever but still falling behind every month? Between grocery prices, bills, and credit card debt growing, it can feel impossible to get ahead. Minimum payments aren't designed to get you out of debt. They're designed to actually keep you stuck, but PDS Debt can help. They can reduce up to half of what you owe on credit cards, personal loans, and medical bills, and it starts with a free 30-second assessment at pdsdebt.com/Candace. Stop juggling multiple payments and get one lower monthly payment. The savings begin the day that you complete the quick assessment. If you're carrying any balance on your credit cards, it's costing you money every single day. There's no minimum credit score that's required. PDS Debt is the top-rated company in the industry with thousands of 5-star reviews and an A+ rating on the BBB. So get your free 30-second personalized assessment today at pdsdebt.com/Candace. Again, that's pdsdebt.com/Candace. I also want to tell you guys about the Wellness Company because by now you've probably heard that there is an explosive outbreak in the U.S. this summer. More than 18,000 confirmed and suspected cases of cyclosporiasis have now been nationwide, and Michigan health officials have confirmed the first 2 United States deaths associated with that outbreak. The CDC says the illness is caused by cyclospora, a microscopic parasite commonly spread through contaminated fresh produce. It can cause severe stomach cramps, nausea, fatigue, and other debilitating symptoms. If you get sick, the CDC recommends Bactrim. That's why the Wellness Company created the medical emergency kit with generic Bactrim plus 7 additional prescription medications to help treat more than 25 common illnesses and medical emergencies, all prescribed before you need them. Getting your kit is simple. You complete a secure online medical questionnaire. If it's approved by a licensed physician, your kit ships directly to your door. So don't wait until you're sick to wish that you were prepared. Visit twc.health/Candace and use code Candace at checkout to save up to $45 off plus free shipping. That's twc.health/Candace. Kits are available for United States residents only.
Okay, we're back. Fantastic. I think we're back. By the way, just an FYI, for those of you that are watching The Crucible, there's 30,000 concurrent there watching. Support Andrew Wilson. That's your fans of his. Click that subscribe button and helps him grow his business. If you're watching Candace, I think there's 225 to 250,000 concurrent right now. We'd like to see that 300, 400,000 number on there. Click that button as well to subscribe and share it with your friends and family. And if you're watching it on PBD Podcast, do the same there as well. This allows us to have more conversations like this. The mainstream media hates the fact that we're having these conversations right now. Just so you know, they want to control it. This is free for all. This is what's best for the audience. That's why we like freedom of speech. Having said that, let's go back into the text conversation you were having, right?
Okay.
Let's stay there, and then we'll go into the cross-examination stuff in about 30 minutes.
Okay. That sounds fair. Okay. So, yeah, I used basically three pillars for the totality of the evidence. Okay. So if you want to know exactly what those three pillars are, this is going to be the testimony with the text messages and the confessions. This is going to be the physical evidence, and this is going to be the totality of the summary of the case. Okay. Mm-hmm. So right now we're focusing on one of these pillars in my defense, which is fine. I understand that I have to defend my claims as well. So when we're talking about the messages themselves, they seem totally valid. I have no idea why they wouldn't be valid. And I have not heard any good explanation for why it is that these messages should even be questioned. The defense hasn't questioned them, as far as I'm aware. Nobody has actually questioned that these messages came from Robinson to date, except perhaps you and other people who are kind of in that camp. But why should I question these exactly? I'm not sure.
Okay, so first let's just go over legally what the point is of a probative hearing. The defense is not they're not there to say or to argue or to defend themselves at all. They have to address what is being presented by the state, okay? So they're not here to then say, let me give you an explanation for these text messages.
Agreed.
The relevant portion of what the defense did do was actually before we got to the preliminary hearing. I had mentioned that it was initially supposed to be scheduled for some time in May. They asked for an extension. That reading through those filings of why they were requesting an extension and why I actually believe their extension should have been granted, because they did not receive discovery on their text messages. That was one of the reasons. There were many reasons why they wanted to have an extension, but this was crucial, right? So forget just the general sense that these messages feel off. And yes, you are allowed to have an intuition. You are allowed to have a sense and just go, this is very weird. We're being told this kid had like above a 4.0, Tyler Robinson. He wanted to get away. I mean, the text messages almost run head to head with themselves. Like he wanted to get away with it. So he thought the best thing to do would be to text a full confession of what he did, down to what I didn't even remember, saying, yeah, and that's also me in the surveillance footage. It felt a little too on the nose. People have common sense. You just don't text message. But then we're also supposed to believe that he put a note under because and burn this and get rid of the evidence. But don't worry about that because I'm about to text you a full confession. That it felt off. It felt weird off the bat. The manner in which they were texting, we're told he's like a gamer who's using a Dremel to carve expressions, catch fascist. But then suddenly he's writing like a 1700
also, as a Helldivers
novelist
player, he did actually get the 500K code correct.
Yeah, I'm not a gamer, so we'll say that if we start debating that, you'll be way over my head.
But yes.
But my point being is just that, first, it's a general sense of why people had a reaction to these messages that seemed like they were written by Jane Austen rather than like a kid who games and writes catch.
Yeah, but do you see how
fascist.
that's intuition?
That is. I just said that. I said just parking aside the intuition of just something feels wrong here, which you should follow your intuition. You should actually do that. If you say the COVID vaccine is running out, feels like it's coming out too fast and there's too many celebrities telling me to do it, I'd like to take a pause. That's good. That is, you are allowed to do that. I believe in intuition.
But hang on. Let me respond a little bit here because you've been going for a minute. Let me at least respond to a little bit of this. So the first thing is like when people bring up the COVID vaccine, not trusting the COVID vaccine en masse was the science. That wasn't just intuition. That was the science. There was tons of competing science. Now, they tried to suppress it. That's true. But there was tons of competing science for why you shouldn't take a risky mRNA vaccine and masks and things like this.
Kept telling us was 100%.
Now, when you're talking about intuition, though, when you say trust your intuition, I'm actually giving a different message. You actually should be very wary about trusting just your intuition. It is true that intuition can be useful, but it has to be tempered with logic, reason, explanatory power, and evidence, not just intuition.
That's why we're parking it aside. Intuition's the first step. Something feels off, right?
Okay.
That was my first step with COVID. I don't like the way it's being pushed. It shouldn't require a celebrity campaign, by the way. Another element of that is why people don't feel good about the Charlie thing. Why do we have so many influencers saying things? It's over. Why are you guys all using the same adjective? Can you switch it up? I'm overwhelmed. Like, chill. Like, you could say, I found some
kind
parts
like
compelling. I think this should go.
Like
I found some parts compelling. Maybe we should, see at the trial. That would be kind of.
Don't you think Fed slop's a buzzword for the counter industry?
But everyone on the same day of watching this trial, which was, I would say, not overwhelming at all. Nobody came in medium, right? No one came in like there were some interesting aspects. This was a little suspect. But I do think it's enough to go to trial. They all came in like they were passing away and we're going to die from being overwhelmed.
Well, they're trusting their intuition.
Okay. Well, actually, in that scenario, they're looking at the preliminary hearing and have a reaction to it. It wasn't their intuition. But like I said, parking aside, just getting to the substance, parking that aside, aside just a general intuition that sometimes might be second messages. Then we look at the filings, which came from the defense, and they were requesting an extension saying, we have gone to the prosecution and we have requested all of this stuff in discovery. Yes, you are saying that you took Lance's phone, okay, and that you collected his phone on September 11th and that you sent it off or whatever. You took a picture of the text messages and we are being given these text messages to review. Crucially, Kathy Nestor said, I have not even been given access to my client's phone during this hearing. She said, I haven't even been given access to my client's phone. She can't tell you, as a part of their discovery request, it's not enough to say to me, Candace, I just got a text message from Candace. And I say, I didn't send that text message. Maybe that's what her client's saying. We don't know because we're not at the trial, right? Maybe he didn't send those messages. Could there be someone who logged into his Discord? Could there be someone who logged in to his Apple? George could be sending text messages right now. We are married. He has every login that I have. And remember, he's up for a death sentence. So if I'm able to sow reasonable doubt with common sense, he may come during the trial and when they actually have to address these points, say, I did not write those messages. I was here. Lance, my boyfriend, was logged into my phone, logged into my Apple ID and my iCloud sending messages. I know that we have the capability because my husband does it. He has the capability to send messages from my phone. It is not convincing to the public when, for whatever reason, the FBI combined with the SBI, it was not the prosecution's fault. They made that clear during that hearing, would not allow them that discovery request to be able to see where did that message come from? Because you're saying my client was here, right? I want to know if that message actually was generated from his iPhone when he was waiting to retrieve his rifle, hoping that the pooch doesn't have a bad sniffer, like just weird messages. I want to make sure that, yes, it was actually him. He was holding his phone and his boyfriend didn't just log in to his computer when he was home. Lance was his boyfriend. That is a crucial fact here. That discovery was not met by the time we got to preliminary hearing. So I remain unconvinced by these text messages. Just as you feel convinced by them, I feel unconvinced by them.
Okay. So then the idea here is the reason that you don't think that these are valid text messages, and you don't, right?
It has not been proven that these messages are valid, and they don't sound valid to me. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone, even if someone was selling like a, I don't know, pot on the corner, would be smarter than to write a full-fledged confession. He even writes, I thought I would get away with it, and I was hoping never to tell you until old age. And then we're being told that he wanted to commit suicide. And okay, but he just said he wanted to get away with it, but he's not smart enough to, I don't know, maybe not text it's such a confession like we've never seen. I think this would be like the first time ever somebody has start to finish written an entire, I'm in this surveillance footage and I'm here and I'm wearing my Converse. I'm being a little facetious here, but it was a little ridiculous. It didn't pass a sniff test for me.
You have kids. And you love them more than anything.
I do.
If it was the case that you thought that your kid was innocent, wouldn't you be out telling everybody and their brother that you thought that they were innocent? And also, wouldn't you maybe recant and say, hey, he didn't actually confess to me. None of this happened the way that state is presenting it. What would have prevented the parents from testifying?
Well, two things. I can answer that. And if you watch my show, I keep telling you it's not vibes. So right after the shooting happened, Lance Twiggs, the FBI put him into a safe house they paid for. They went to the parents as well, to Matt Robinson and Amber, basically said, your life's at risk. There could be somebody who jumps up and wants to avenge Charlie Kirk. And, we're going to watch you. And they went into a federal safe house. What happened next is that they started thinking that the feds were maybe gonna, maybe not as honest as they thought. And
how do you know any of that?
So you gotta watch the show, right?
Yeah, no. How do you know that?
I had a source within the Robinson family.
You have a source, an anonymous source, of course. So there's no way for us to verify that what you're saying right now is actually even true.
Do you find it to be reliable hearsay?
No, I don't find it to be reliable at all. It's just a source.
I'm just doing what the prosecution
What you're doing is
did.
a cool story.
It's not cool. Well, you must have hated watching the preliminary hearing.
You're giving us a cool story.
Wait,
you're saying that according to your sources, that the reason that the parents haven't recanted any of this.
Recanted what? They have no statement from the parents.
Wait, I just want to make sure that if it was the case, it was being reported in mainstream media that your father came to you and said, hey, is this you? What's going on here? And then he and one of his buddies took you in where you turned yourself in. You wouldn't go out and be like, no, that's not what happened.
That isn't what happened, though. You're just wrong on this.
Okay. Maybe I'm paraphrasing. What am I wrong on?
So what is sorry, just so I'm clear, where is your evidence that the parents turned him in?
Well, no. I didn't say that.
You said there's the mainstream media?
I said with a sheriff friend.
Yes.
But the father did confront him.
The father confronted what?
Tyler Robinson.
And where did you learn this? That the Tyler
confronted him? Well, that's part
him?
of the official documents. Our fact checkers can pull that up. But yes.
But I'm saying, when you say official documents, do you mean you saw this on CNN or you saw this play out in the hearing?
No, this was one of the things that I went through and fact checked pre-debate.
Are you talking about the charging documents?
I think it was it could have been in the charging documents, but we can pull them up.
No.
And yes, are you disputing this?
Do we have that on the back to pull it up?
I can already tell you what you're talking about, the charging documents, because this is where we had to figure out where this story came from, because everyone was operating under the assumption that Matt Robinson turned him in. Until we got to the preliminary hearing and we understood, like I said, even for that, when you are charging someone, you can use hearsay. It's all probative, right?
Sure.
Nothing. So they didn't have statements. It's not like Matt Robinson, even though he was interviewed that night. Amber Robinson was interviewed that night by a Fed, separate rooms. Tyler Robinson was interviewed by a Fed. They did not produce statements saying, my son did this. I believe my son did this. But what happened was they did interviews, but also the crucial person here who you just brought up is Mike Mitchell. Mike Mitchell is the biggest unknown in this entire case. Everyone keeps saying they heard from Mike Mitchell this, they heard from Mike Mitchell that. So when the person wrote up the report that night, and it was Brian Davis who wrote up what became the charging document, he after they transported Tyler Robinson from the Washington Sheriff's County office up to, I think it's Salt Lake City, I think it was 4 a.m. in the morning that they got up there, he then writes the what becomes a charging document. So he's basically saying, we all spoke to a bunch of people and here's the information that we got, right? We've not seen that. So it could have come from Mike Mitchell. Mike Mitchell could be saying,
I don't know how this negates the point, though.
Why wouldn't the negates the point, because you don't have a statement from the parents.
Yeah,
you are going.
Why wouldn't they just correct the
it's not correcting.
misinformation?
That doesn't negate the point. The point is that we now got the preliminary hearing. If the parents were the ones who said, I'm turning my son in because he's guilty.
I didn't say they turned him in.
I think you're talking about the over. You said it's been the narrative. Everybody's known this. The narrative initially, which I think you agree with, was that, Matt Robinson knew his kid was guilty and turned him into the police station. What actually happened in terms of Sheriff Brooksby, who was present there and gave a press conference, what happened was this Mike Mitchell character essentially peer pressured him, and we can get a fact check on this. We can find Sheriff Brooksby's press conference. And he said, they know it's you and you're going to come in peaceably, or people are going to be banging down your door. He was a undercover cop, which I don't like that. I don't know what he did undercover. It's very hard to find anything about Mike Mitchell, but he worked with them for 20 plus years, the police officers. The reason why Tyler Robinson knew him was because he lived nearby and he was also his Boy Scout leader.
How does this negate that the parents could write this second? And by the way, if you had the evidence, I'm going to address
that point. I'm just saying that your first point, which is that the parents did this.
Yeah.
We don't know that the parents.
I didn't say that they did ever. Never happened.
You're quoting the parents as having said. You said that Matt Robinson said that his kid was. Did you say involved? I don't want to misquote misquote you.
Confronted him about
Confronted him.
Yes.
And I'm telling you that we have not seen any evidence that that is true.
We can fact check that.
Okay.
Because we do have evidence that
And
that's
I'm
true.
saying it's the charging doc, which could have been derived from a statement Mike Mitchell said.
Two things I have ready in the back. One is the charging doc, and the
Yes.
other one is a video of Kathy Nestor saying she hasn't seen Tyler's phone.
Okay, we can run
Which
Kathy to
one
go
would you
back
wanna
and
see
then
first?
just to
You
go
wanna see
backwards
Kathy
to,
first?
Kathy first in court saying she didn't get her client's phone. Yeah, and then I think we'll go to the, if
A
you're
thing
okay with
not,
that.
A thing not in dispute. These are all things that are not even disputing.
Okay, so we don't
And
have to show it.
We never get to the thing that I am disputing.
Well, I was just providing an answer. We were coming back in from a break because you were talking about the text messages as something that you felt was concrete. So it was just my rebuttal to you that it's not concrete because they haven't had a chance to actually answer that. And she didn't even get to see your client's phone. So that's effectively, again, the state saying these messages are real. You don't get the discovery on these messages just yet. She will during trial. They will actually get
Don't you
discovery on the
think
messages.
that would make their case fall apart if it was the case that they weren't able to actually pull the data off the text messages? Do you think the prosecution would go to court with fabricated text messages?
It's called winners and losers. They may not be fabricated, but by the way, as what they are saying, like I said, if there was somebody logged into his phone, they may not be fabricated. That's the point.
So let's get to the
they just
let's
could
get
be
to
somebody
the parents,
else.
the parents fact check. That
Yeah,
was
so
the
I
other
was
one,
saying,
right?
I believe what you're talking about was derived from the charging doc, which was signed off by Brian Davis.
Let's pull it up.
Let's see if that's correct. What are we looking at
Robinson's mother explained that over the last year or so, I'm sorry.
Can you zoom in a
here? Is
little
this
bit?
the charging
I
doc?
can't see it. Robinson's
yes.
father reported that when his wife showed him the surveillance image of the suspected shooter in the news, he agreed that it looked like their son. He also believed that the rifle that police suspected the shooter used matched the rifle that was given to his son as a gift. As a result, Robinson's father contacted his son and asked him to send a photo of the rifle, which makes sense with the text messages. Robinson did not respond. However, Robinson's father spoke on the phone with Robinson. Robinson implied he planned to take his own life. Robinson's parents were able to convince him to meet at their home.
Yes. So this is proving my point. This is from the charging document, correct? Yeah. So what I'm saying to you is that 3 people got interviewed on that night. Mike Mitchell got interviewed, Amber Robinson got interviewed, and Matt Robinson got interviewed. Of the 3 of them, only one of them actually wrote a statement, which was referred to in this preliminary trial. He came in, I believe, in March, Mike Mitchell, and he wrote a statement, which I find to be very shady that they decided to bring.
But why aren't the parents disputing that?
No. Well, first off,
That's the question
First
I've
off,
been
the
asking.
parents are not going to ever play in court, play to the cameras in court when they have a legal team that is going to be advising them not to speak to the court because your son could go to prison
But
forever.
they're playing to somebody else who's your source?
I'm not going to address that.
They're
'Cause
playing to
I don't-
someone
I-
else
I
who's
don't
your
think- I don't
source,
think
but
it's-
won't go publicly tell the media
yes.
this is not true?
Well, what I did not say to you that I just said I have a source, so I want to be very clear and take it from somebody who is involved and permanently sued. When I have to take my lawyer's advice, I mean, there's so many things that I want to respond to when people are speaking about.
Yeah, but it's bizarre that they would utilize a source which would get the information to you, but wouldn't just go to the media and be like, actually, that's all wrong.
I am telling you that you would nary find a lawyer who would advise you to go to the media. And speak.
This mother,
especially when your son
if I thought that my kid
was up for death.
If I thought that my kid was in any way, shape, or form going to be up, you couldn't shut me up. Or my wife, she would be like, that's not true. That's ridiculous. There's no possible, that never happened. These people are lying through their teeth. They'd be public whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that's for you and your wife. But when a judge issues a gag order in a case and your son is up for death, and your lawyers could be advising you that if you say anything, you could blow the case, you would have a more responsible consideration.
I see.
And we're speaking opinion here. You're like, well, I wouldn't care. I'd violate it, and I'd violate the judge's orders and see what would happen.
But if you have a source, it seems like they're violating it with them.
I'm not speaking to a source, but what I am saying to you is speaking just relevant to what this is. We have not seen any proof that statement that is included in this charging document. I think it is highly likely on the basis of the preliminary hearing that all came from Mike Mitchell. And Mike Mitchell would be a part. He's
based
saying,
on the statements of
it's
the
him
parents.
saying the parents told me this. The parents could dispute that. That's going to come down the line, right? They're going to be able to seat the parents. I will say this, putting together context clues. If the state had it on, 100% certainty that Matt Robinson and Amber Robinson said it, a 5-day preliminary hearing would be a good time to say we have enough evidence. And I can tell you why. Matt Robinson made this statement, and here is his statement that he signed. That would have been a good time to present that evidence.
That would also be a good
side.
time for the defense to say that's just totally fabricated.
No, it's not. It's the wrong time.
Why couldn't they?
That is completely the wrong time.
Why couldn't they?
Because what they're doing is they already said they didn't receive discovery. They literally can't. They literally can't because they can't. They did not receive discovery.
You're saying that they didn't receive that information?
No. They just received the text messages. But in order to...
That's not the text messages.
The probative information.
Yeah, we're talking about the information that we just reviewed. That's not the text messages.
They never presented it. The state never put it on.
Yeah, they didn't. The defense could easily still have presented this. Yeah.
No.
They could have said they're
no.
They're not allowed to. Are you sure?
In a preliminary hearing,
yeah.
the defense is engaging with whatever evidence the state decides to put on. They did not put this on as evidence. Brian Davis was up there.
So they're not allowed to present anything?
They're responding to the state's evidence.
I'm asking, are they allowed to present anything?
They are allowed to say...
Like if there was a conspiracy that they could prove right then and there, would they present that in one of these hearings?
No, it wouldn't be the right time for that.
I disagree. I think that they not only could do it, but they would do it. In fact, when I talked in depth with my attorney, they said that's exactly, if you had actual evidence that there was fabrications by the feds, that's exactly when you would introduce that.
So when in the document that they filed yesterday or a couple of days ago, the appropriate, like what you're doing at this stage of the hearing is the state is saying we have enough evidence that we think this needs to go forth to the trial. Hence the reason that there's this extraordinary, we allow hearsay because it doesn't really need to be perfect. It can be enough that we feel like we can move forward, right? And okay, I disagree with that in general when somebody's rotting in prison, but whatever. The next phase is for them to meet in court and for the defense to essentially present an argument to the state that says, we find this filing to be defective in and of itself. We don't even have to defend ourselves because you, the state, have enough, you know what the laws are on the books, and this filing is defective and you should get rid of these charges because they don't make sense based on what you can decide based on a law on the books. So then that's why they then file the dismissal. Right. So in the dismissal, what they're doing is they are engaging, and this is what was widely misinterpreted.
Well, yeah, they're engaging as though as it's a hypothetical. If this is hypothetically true, then
so
X.
they're saying all of these charges.
I'm not disputing any of that.
So that's what you're asking. Why you're saying could they just put
what I'm asking specifically is like who could shut parents up who are like, no way, there's no possible. This never happened. This is ridiculous. They would be shouting it on CNN. They would be shouting it from the rooftops. They would be losing their minds. And you're like, nope, the gag order would be enough to keep them quiet. Not enough for them to talk to your source, but enough to keep them quiet. I think that that's quite ridiculous. But I'll even concede this whole point to you. Let's just say maybe this was misconstrued, right? There's a little bit of reason to doubt it because we're still waiting for the evidence for trial. If that's the case, then why not take the same standard for the evidence that you present? You're just waiting for trial.
Well, you didn't do that.
Wait a second.
We're here.
Wait a second. I just want to make sure that I got this right. That's your argument to me, right?
My argument to you is what?
Your argument to me is that, hey, wait a second, Andrew. There's not enough here that convinces me, right?
Well, that's actually my rebuttal to you, is that you are saying, why are people engaging in what you term to be conspiracy theories?
No.
I term it to be thinking. They're just thinking because they're recognizing there are a lot of holes in these stories and that this is not strong evidence, right? This is the reason they're doing it. I'm explaining to you, this is the reason that they're doing it. I'm addressing what you view to be overwhelming evidence. And by the way, I want to be clear.
That which convinces me.
But thus far, every point that you've brought up, every point that you've brought up, did you feel like this is beyond a reasonable doubt? I mean, you realize
remember what I said in my opening.
Going to be
it's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just what I find convincing is what I find overwhelming.
So why are you so upset when people say they don't find it convincing?
If that was the limitation of the claims that you made, if it was just, wait a second, there's a little bit of problems. There's some problems in this case that I have questions for that I want answers to. Nobody would have a problem, actually. Least of all me. I would be the least likely person to have an issue with you, any of your fans, anybody saying. In fact, I've had tons of Discord calls about this. My position's always been clear. Of course, conspiracies exist. Some of them have way better evidence than others, but I've seen them myself. I know conspiracy. In fact, the federal government has hundreds of thousands of laws about conspiracies. They see them everywhere. We both know this, right? That's never what the problem is. The problem is when you make claims outside of, well, wait a second. I'm just questioning evidence here. I'm just questioning what the state's case is here. I'm just asking questions. It's when you make claims outside of that, where you claim that there's good evidence or good standards you should believe because, and then it turns out that it's all nonsense or it's wackadoo stuff or it makes no sense. And when we have a chance to cross-examine your evidence that you've presented, I'm going to show a lot of that. A lot of this conjecture that's based on literally nothing, that leads from no inferences whatsoever. Like you couldn't even infer it logically. That's the problem. The problem has never been whether or not you just said, you know, there's not enough in this case so far until we get to the trial. I remain unconvinced. I'm sure there's tons of people who remain unconvinced yet until we get to the trial. I think that's fine. I think it's fine. There's people who are convinced too. That's never been my problem. My problem is the claims which are external to that.
Okay. I'm not sure I really care if you have a problem with what I think in my own spare time. I don't understand this like lecture that you just gave. But beyond that, what I'm saying is that if the state is allowed to use,
I didn't
this
lecture
is what
you.
this is what my problem is. You guys are not allowed. Yeah, you guys think while it's still legal. You can. You are allowed to do that. So, but anyway, going back to you saying I wouldn't have a problem. I think I just demonstrated pretty thoroughly that what you claim that you have a problem with is exactly what the state is engaged in at this stage. So it just doesn't make sense.
That's not the case. In fact,
so if people look and they say, I'm looking at the gun and I see, and I'm inferring this, and someone else says, I'm looking at the gun evidence and I'm inferring that, they're both doing the exact same thing.
They're not.
You're just saying, I want to do it for the state. That's
propositionally false.
That is not propositionally false.
I'll explain exactly how. It is the case that every proposition is going to have a true or false conclusion, period. That's just logic, right? It's the law of excluded middle. All propositions are going to be true or they're going to be false. When we get into when we're making inferences based on propositions. We can actually come to true conclusions with false premises inside of a proposition, in fact. What we're talking about here is not whether or not you feel that you're convinced by this evidence.
But you felt like you were convinced.
Right? Sure. But here's the thing. When you ask me my reason, Andrew, why are you convinced by this? I can give you my reasons why I'm convinced by it, why it seems reasonable and rational to me to be convinced. You could even say, but Andrew, I'm just not convinced by it. If that was the limitation of your claims, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. That's why I wanted to have the conversation, in fact, was so that we could move into your actual claims that you've made, which transcend the idea of I'm just asking questions.
Before we get into that, your team has one thing they want to show before you go into that. So if you want to pull that up, this is the prosecution filing showing defense had full discovery by April 1st.
Oof.
They did not. That's not true.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
To date, the state's prosecutors have disclosed all evidence that is presently and reasonably available to them as required under Rule 16, Utah R Criminal, to be more precise, as of April 1st.
Yeah, that was not 100%. That's why they're caging that by saying what's reasonable. There was an entire, and we can pull this up, like we should now play the Kathy Nestor clip because that's from there. So, and they were basically saying you don't need it at this stage, meaning it's not reasonable that you're asking for this when we're going into a hearing that's just going to be based on hearsay and stuff, things of that nature. But of course, by the time a trial comes, you're going to get all the discovery documents.
Where it's just show cause.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what they're saying there.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. So that's
I'm even fine with it.
Yeah, we all know. And then, by the way, just now that the hearing is over, and you can also fact check this, they now at the end of the preliminary hearing dropped like an insane amount of the discovery stuff they gave to them like the week after. You guys can give me the exact amount. I don't want to say because I don't know my I don't remember how much it was. It was an absurd amount of stuff that they gave to them right after the preliminary hearing that they had been asking for. Because that was one of the things that I kept saying on my show is as we were watching that preliminary of the preliminary, why not just give them the stuff now so they can engage in these arguments? Because I feel like it's like, I want to hear what they have to say about the text messages. Why can't you just give them what they're asking for so that they can actually engage you? And it didn't happen. So, but the judge ruled that it wasn't necessary at this stage. And that was the whole point of that
because it's
preliminary to the preliminary. Yeah.
Would you like to play the Kathy video?
Well, he's saying he's not disagreeing, so I don't think we need to.
There's no
disagreement that she said that.
Yeah.
So so I guess the disagreements now would move into the evidences that you have stated on the record, which transcend elements of reason.
Why are we having a transcendental conversation now? Because
they're all related to this case.
Your entire thing was about looking at the evidence, which never made sense to me, again, because all of the evidence that you felt to be overwhelming was hearsay. That was bizarre to me.
You told me that I could take as much time as I wanted to question you on these things.
I'm just asking you just to lay the groundwork of what you're saying is
Because you've
problematic,
made
that
many,
you decide
many
that it trips
claims.
into
I'll
something
explain.
else. And I do still want to hold you for going through, because we've discussed the gun, we've discussed your...
And you can hold me to those things, but I
yeah.
would like to get into the
and
things
we
that
should
you've
discuss
said.
the screwdriver as
So,
well.
and I'll explain exactly what the groundwork is. When you make claims which pass the idea of I'm just asking questions because the state's evidence is not convincing, I think you have to answer for those claims because they are in regards to this case. You're saying, I have a claim. It is in regards to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which is what we're talking about. Not just the case of Charlie Kirk, his assassination. You should have to answer for the claims that you've made in regards to the assassination itself. You should. Yeah, agreed. So if that's the case, then I would like to finally dive into some of that evidence and dive into it.
Well, just to be clear, and I'm happy to have you talk about, like I said, publicly, you want to engage in some conspiracies, but I said I want to make sure that we get to the substance of our debate. The substance of our debate
is the major
is
substance.
me demonstrating that all of the quote unquote evidence that you feel that you have, which demonstrates that Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk.
You don't find convincing. I get it.
It's been invalidated by the testimony that we saw, and in your answer for when I explained to you that he had the most degraded prints was, I don't know. Okay, well there lies my ability to process that.
It's just fine for you to not be convinced up to this point. All of your viewers, everybody watching. You're conceding. Nobody's giving a dispute that if all your claims ever were just up to now, the evidence that the state's given, I'm just kind of not convinced. That is not what's been happening. What's actually been happening is that you've made tons of claims in regards to this case and in regards to the Kirk assassination, which are far above and beyond, I just doubt, the state's theory.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, sure.
And those are the things that
I do doubt the state's theory. I also am welcome to say what I think. If you want to move into opinions, if you want to talk about Erica Kirk, if you want to talk about Turning Point USA,
I'd like to talk about all
and
of
get
it.
into it, I'm totally happy to do that. But I just want to say that, I do not feel, because I've said what's important to me is that we exhaust this topic first of our actual debate claims. I do not feel that you sufficiently have argued that the evidence is overwhelming.
Candace, question for you.
But I am sorry you feel that way.
Candace, one question. What evidence do you need to see for you to say Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk?
That's a great question. So I actually expected in this preliminary hearing, the inverse of what he was saying is true, right? So this is now the time the state is putting on their evidence. That's the purpose of this hearing, right? The state is using hearsay, but they're also putting on their evidence. So I was just expecting some sort of a slam dunk. Like, we got him on camera taking the shot. At least we have him clear on camera. You're telling me this guy drove 13 hours all around. Like, we can definitely show you a picture that it's going to be beyond a reasonable doubt. Before we even get to the trial, people are going to see and go, oh crap, like it was really Tyler Robinson. I was expecting to at least see evidence that, because I had reported early on that the source was saying that Tyler did not step foot on campus that day. It is my perspective that he had something to do with something. I do believe he was disposing clothes at this stage, at this phase. I do believe he was disposing clothes. He was involved somehow. I find Lance to be more suspicious, if I'm being honest with you. And also, like I said, the use immunity that was given to Lance by the feds, the fact that the feds didn't ask him any questions, the fact that I spoke with Lance Twiggs' family, and they were like, it's very weird that the feds are not asking him more questions. He's exactly the person that I would imagine to be involved in some stuff. Allegedly, I'll say allegedly. But when we got to the preliminary hearing, there was not a single piece of evidence that I felt was slam dunk. I was waiting for that, a photo. I mean, anything would have made me go, all right, I think this could be the guy. If they had handed over the discovery on the text messages, since that was their big ta-da, we've got the text messages, that would be the first thing that I would hand over. But actually, who was holding them up? Like I said, it wasn't the prosecution. They're right to say we were handing things over, and we heard the defense argue on behalf of the prosecution, saying it's not them and it's not the SBI, it's the FBI that's holding on to things. Is the FBI took everything. The FBI took the gun. The FBI took initially the screwdriver. And then when I heard testimony about the things that they found that were suspicious, example being the backpack, that's something that really bothers me, that they say they traced the shooter, they traced the route that he went on, and then there was an we know it looks like he's wearing some sort of a backpack. We know that there was an abandoned backpack found at the bus stop in front of a library, and they felt that this should be taken into evidence. They took it. The FBI, this was the testimony of Amanda Baker, I believe her last name is, but you might want to fact check that because I think I'm blending last names. She was the forensics for the FBI. And then she says she gets a call on the 13th and they stop testing on this backpack because they find that the backpack actually belongs to somebody on Charlie's team. But if you know the map of the layout of the campus, you're going, well, what the hell are they doing all the way up? This is nowhere near anywhere. And by the way, that's not an acceptable answer for why you just gave it back. That's like, why would you give it back? You're acting like no one's ever been killed by somebody on their team before, right? So I found that to be very strange that it was on the exact route that the alleged gunman ran, and that their excuse was, we just gave it back because we heard that this belonged to somebody on Charlie's team. So that to me is, this is why the investigation itself feels underwhelming. When you learn, and this is completely crazy to me, that some of the artifacts that Charlie was wearing were immediately returned to Erica. That's absurd. That is absurd. Everything should be in evidence. When you learn that the car that they carried Charlie in to go to the hospital, they had immediately towed, cleaned, and back up for resale, that's absurd. That should be sitting in evidence. And any police officer that you speak to will say, or a person that's been involved in a crime will say, I didn't get my stuff back for years. That had nothing to do with anything. It was just around. And they kept it into evidence until the trial was over and it has to be approved. I think somebody said by the attorney general has to sign off on giving you those objects back. And we were told this is all fine. And we see, this is just one example, Erica holding the crucifix. That should be in evidence. Irrespective of if you feel bad for her and think she should have it and it's sweet, that should be in evidence. Immediately paving over the crime scene. This is like the craziest thing ever. This defies common sense. You immediately, and when you heard the guy who did it actually go up on a podcast and explain, I got the call. They said it was a paver emergency. I've never in my entire career heard of a paver emergency. They had already had someone come up and dig up the dirt. So by the time he got there on Sunday, the dirt had already been dug up for him to lay down pavers. That is what people are looking at and going, this is weird. There needs to be answers for why this was done. And he tells us the call came from the feds and the governor's office. UVU's washed their hands of it. And what he's saying sounds true because we heard during the testimony, one person described the regions of who was in control of everything. Mm-hmm. The feds were in control of the courtyard. So in order for anybody to have paved anything, that was federal territory, so to speak. I'm maybe not using that in the best cop term, but the feds were in control of the courtyard. So these are things that I think should be answered for. Why are we doing things differently than you would in any other criminal scenario of keeping the evidence until we know more, until we're confident, the various decoys. I did it. It just doesn't look right.
Okay, so go back to the question. So what would you need to see for you to say?
Something, if they had, I was expecting, here we have him, he took the shot, here it is. And then I'd be like, great, a clear image of him on the staircase where I'm like, that's definitively Tyler Robinson and he was on campus. We got nothing. We got literally nothing but hearsay of people saying.
But you basically get no case.
What?
You basically no case on planet Earth. You get the,
sure.
Oh, we got a picture.
Okay,
Here's him with the murder weapon.
Right.
Here's him taking the shot.
Most of this doesn't take place on a college campus that has surveillance everywhere.
Yeah,
one clear image of his.
But I don't understand when you're
his
asked
car plates.
If you're asked the question, what would it take to convince? It'd be the same question be asked to me, Andrew. What would take to convince you that the oppositional is
patsy,
true, right? That he's a patsy or something like that. Just good, clear, concise evidence that's been presented, right, and is being presented that I could go through and link all together to see if there's actually some clear picture of there being a patsy. That's what it would take from me.
Okay.
I
don't disagree with that. We haven't heard the defense
just
respond.
a good evidentiary standard. And then, of course, I would change my mind.
So just to qualify this, so there is a possibility in the next few months that you may come out and say, guys, it's done. Tyler killed him. Yeah. So you're saying yes to that.
Yeah.
I think it's very important for the audience here.
Without question.
For you, is there anything that you could see for you to say, yeah, this guy was a patsy?
Of course, I'm going to always follow evidence.
Perfect.
So my whole thing is just this. It's really important to me. I don't mind people being truth seekers and justice searchers, and the internet has helped solve tons of crimes. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, right? However, there's also people who they not only don't solve crimes, but they just come up with conjecture, and what's called flooding the zone. You flood the zone with tons and tons of conspiracy-based ideas, and they go nowhere, right? And in fact, they actually take away from legitimate investigation. Now, I'm not even saying anybody here is purposely flooding the zone. That's not even the claim. All I'm saying is that the claims made absent, this is just me not being convinced by the state's evidence. Those become claims, and claims have to be defended. Just like mine have to be defended, yours have to be defended. And that's what we're going to get to now, yeah?
You want to get into it? Would you guys like to take an ad break?
We'll take an ad
come
break.
back?
An ad break, sure.
And then we'll talk Erica Kirk and TPUSA.
And the conspiracies that have been conjectured by Candace Owens in regards to this case in the Charlie Kirk
Perfect.
assassination.
Folks, we'll take a 3.5 minute break and we'll be back soon.
All right, you guys, you have probably seen all the buzz around red light therapy lately, but what's even more compelling are the stories from people who say it completely changed their lives. One example starts